Are you a Christian and desire to be rich? I'm going to assume the answer is what I thought. And before you start praying and fasting and doing all the good things you like to do, to attract God's attention to your prayers, you will need to listen to this message first. This message is for Christians who are rich or those who desire to be rich in life. This message is from someone you will listen to. It's coming from someone with authority and credibility. Someone whose message, advice, and thoughts you cannot ignore. It's coming from Apostle Paul. Okay? So if you are rich or desire to be rich in life, this message will open your eyes and definitely make you to understand the risk, consequences, and also expectations of being rich or desiring to be rich as a Christian and what your options are. Before I proceed, if this is your first time on this channel or first time listening to me, I'd like to welcome you specially. My name is Bola Olu-Jordan and I'm going to be your host today. If you are not yet a subscriber to this channel, please subscribe so that you can be informed next time I come on air like this. Okay, without further ado, let's go on to our Bible study for today. In 1 Timothy chapter number 6 and verse 17 to 19, Paul gave 7 charges to the rich when writing to his beloved son in the Lord, Timothy. These 7 charges are applicable to you if you are a Christian and maybe you are rich or maybe you want to be rich in life. You need to take note of them very carefully, especially number 6 and number 7, and of course, also the result at the end. I'm going to be going over them one after the other in Timothy 6 verses 17 to 19. And this is from the King James Version of the Bible. And by the way, if you prefer another version of the Bible, let me know in the comment below. Before I go on to that, let me first and foremost clear the air about 2 important issues about money and those who desire to be rich. Let's start from verse 9. Paul says, "They that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown man in destruction and perdition." So if you desire to be rich, Paul highlighted 3 risks for those who desire to be rich. So we're going to go over them one after the other, and I'm going to clear the air on that, trusting the Holy Spirit will give us revelation and understanding. Number 1 is they that will be rich fall into temptation. There is a fall. So if you want to be rich, you have to be aware of this risk. There's a risk of you falling into temptation. Money and being rich will, not may, bring temptation. It will bring temptation. Money comes with temptation. It doesn't say that because you're rich, you will fall into that temptation. It's saying that if you're rich or if you desire to be rich, you stand the risk of falling into a temptation. The onus then lies on you to fall into it or to resist it, but it will come. Temptation is a risk for those who are rich and for those who desire to be rich. Money is a good servant, but a bad master. Take note of that. And number 2, from this verse, they that will be rich, number 1, fall into temptation, and it also goes further to say, and a snare. That is the other risk that being rich or desiring to be rich will make you fall into. A snare. A snare is a trap. In the sense that once you are there, once you're rich, you don't want to come down and you're trapped in that lofty height and you're stuck in that mindset, and then the fear of losing comes in. I will talk a little bit more about that later on, but this is not saying that is what is going to happen to you. It's saying it is a risk. It's a risk factor. If you're rich, or if you desire to be rich. And the third one here in this verse says, to fall into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown man in destruction and perdition. Take all this as warning. Paul highlighted these three things, that is, comes with a temptation, comes with a snare, and then they fall into many foolish lusts and hurtful lust, which drown men. As I said, it doesn't mean that you run away from being rich, but for you to know the risk factors of being rich, of desiring to be rich. It's like counting the cost, knowing what portends ahead, so that you are not caught off guard. That is the number one here I want to clear before we go into the main message of Paul. The second here I would like to clear before we proceed is in the next verse, which is verse 10. Paul goes further to say, for the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have heard from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. They pierced themselves through with many sorrows. The Bible did not say that money in itself is the root of all evil. It is the love of money that is the root of all evil. And it will interest you, brothers and sisters, to know that the Greek word used for this love of money is different, is philagoiria. Why is this important? It's important because there are two Greek words for love in the Bible, especially in the Greek translation of the Bible. Phileo is one of them, and another one is agapao, which we commonly interpret or call agape. But the Greek word is agapao. We have the phileo love, and we also have the agapao love, both in Greek. I'm sure many of us are aware of agape love. A filial love, which is from the root word philagoiria, is a surface love, a conditional love, a selfish love, a self-beneficial like, something that you like because it gives you personal pleasure, is for your own personal interest. It's what is convenient for you, what you desire personally. That personal desire is inordinate desire, wrong desire. But like someone who loves to take alcohol, for instance, you can say, I love alcohol, and that is one of the beauty of Greek language. I'm sure some other languages may have something similar to that. It follows the law of language. You cannot use a negative word to qualify a positive situation. Because alcohol is negative, I'm not going to use something positive for the negative. So rather than for me to say I love alcohol, I'll say I phileo alcohol. But let's look at it on the other side. Let's say I want to say I love to do well, I love to do good. I'm going to say I agapao good, because agapao is related to positive, while phileo is related to not really negative, but something personal, something sensual, something. As a matter of fact, that phileo love is correctly translated as covet, avarice, or greed. Now again, as I said, the Greek language has something you cannot use on a positive thing to describe a negative thing. So rather than for you to say I phileo alcohol, the deeper expression of it is actually I covet alcohol. So you want to use something as negative as it is. So I covet alcohol, or I phileo alcohol, not I agapao alcohol. Isn't that beautiful? So I apologize. This is not supposed to be a Greek lesson class, but I think that is very important for us to learn that term so that we get the correct understanding of what the Bible is saying. Paul says that he knows some people who have actually fallen into this, and number one, they erred from the faith, and they pierced themselves through with many arrows. If you covet money or you phileo money, you can err from the faith and you can pierce yourself through with many arrows. The Bible is true and absolute, and you cannot dismiss this warning. Paul says they have coveted to be rich and they have been shipwrecked. In 2 Timothy chapter number 4, I guess, from verse 10 or thereabout, Paul says about a man called Demas. He said, Demas has forsaken me. He has loved this present world and he departed back into another city. Demas was a companion of Paul in the missionary journey, but he got caught up. And Paul says he forsook him. He loved the present world. That word love, this present world, is origomahi. He origomahi the present world and left Paul. He departed from Paul. You must understand this risk and heed the warning. Then this is why Paul gave Timothy these 7 charges to tell everyone in this category, so that you will be able to determine if you still want to be rich or not. Being rich is not a problem, but you have to understand the risk factors and the risk associated with being rich. Having cleared the air on this and highlighted the risk and the warning associated with money and being rich, let us look at these 7 charges one after the other, and I'm going to read again the Bible passage for that from 1 Timothy chapter number 6 from verses 17 to 19. So let's go ahead and look at these charges. Charge them that are rich in this world that they be not high-minded. So number 1, very simple, straightforward. To be not high-minded. To be high-minded means to be proud, or to be arrogant, or haughty, or looking down on others. Apostle James in his letter to the church says in chapter 4 and verse 6 that God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. You may just want to give a little more consideration to that passage, because both Peter and James reiterated that truth, that God absolutely resists proud people. In the book of Proverbs, that among the 6 things God hates most is number 1, pride. Listen to it in Proverbs chapter number 6 verse 16 to 17. These 6 things the Lord hates, yea, 7 are abominations to him: a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that sheds innocent blood. So if you are rich or desire to be rich, do not be high-minded. Do not be proud. Do not look down on others. Know that there is absolutely nothing you have that it is not by the grace of God. Sadly, Paul wrote to Timothy later on and said to him that this pride will be one of the signs of the last days, when perilous times shall come. In Timothy chapter number 3 and verse 1, in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, and it went on and on and on. I pray that you will not be caught in this tentacle. If you desire to be rich, do not be high-minded. That is charge number 1. Take note of this in your thought, in your talk, in your walk, and in your daily life and living with others. Proverbs 29 verse 26 says, a man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. So, if your mind is high, you need to learn to bring it down. Ask God to change your heart. A broken and a contrite heart, God will not despise. Do not be high-minded. Number 1. If you have followed me on this teaching so far and you have been blessed, may I ask you to go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. And also like and click the notification bell and share with a friend if you find it spiritually edifying, which I pray you do. Amen. I think I would like to continue the number 2 down to number 7 and also the result in part 2. I don't want it to get too long and too boring so that we can follow and we can get the spiritual benefits in this message. So join me for part 2 when I talk about number 2 down to number 7